And Jacob dwelt in the land where his father had sojourned, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when he was 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers, while he was still a youth, with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought an evil report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age, and he had made him a coat of many colors. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. And he said to them, "Listen to this dream which I have had. There we were, binding sheaves in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose up and remained standing, and then your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." And his brother said to him, "Will you indeed reign over us and actually be a ruler among us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And he had still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Now I've had another dream. There were the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowing down to me." And he told it to his father and to his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have had? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the ground to you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in his heart. Then his brothers went to shepherd their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers are now shepherding the flock in Shechem. Come, and I will send you to them." And he said to him, "Here I am." And he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flock, and bring word back to me." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him, and there he was, wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, "What are you seeking?" And he said, "I am seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are shepherding the flock." And the man said, "They have moved on from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" And Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him from a distance, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to put him to death. And they said to one another, "Here comes this master of dreams. Now then, come and let us slay him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say, 'A wild beast has devoured him.' Then we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard of it, he tried to deliver him out of their hand and said, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hand to restore him to his father." And when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his coat, the coat of many colors that was on him, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat food, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and there was a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing aromatic gum and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What gain is there if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let our hand not be on him. For he is our brother, our flesh," and his brothers listened to him. So when some Midianite traders passed by, they pulled Joseph up, lifting him out of the pit, and they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And these brought Joseph into Egypt. And when Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. And he returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is not there. So as for me, what shall I do?" Then they took Joseph's coat and slaughtered a male goat and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors and had it brought to their father and said, "We found this place. Please examine it and see whether, or we found this. Please examine it and see whether it is your son's coat or not." And he recognized it and said, "It is my son's coat. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." And Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "Surely I will go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him into Egypt to Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Now at that time, Judah went down from his brothers and pitched his tent near a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there the daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. And he took her and went into her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. And yet again she bore a son and called his name Shelah. And she was in Chezib when she bore him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of Jehovah, and Jehovah put him to death. And Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife, and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up seed to your brother." But since Onan knew that the seed would not be his, whenever he went into his brother's wife, he spilled it on the ground, so that he would not give seed to his brother. But what he did was evil in the sight of Jehovah, so he put him to death also. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house until Shelah, my son, grows up," for he thought he also may die like his brothers. So Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. And in process of time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died, and Judah was comforted and went up to his sheep shears at Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. And it was told to Tamar, saying, "Your father-in-law is now going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." And she removed from herself her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapped herself, and sat in the gate of Enaim, which is on the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah had grown up, and she had not been given to him as his wife. And when Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot, for she had covered her face. And he turned aside to her by the way and said, "Come now, let me come into you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, "What will you give me, that you may come into me?" And he said, "I will send you a kid from the flock." And she said, "Only if you give me a pledge until you send it." And he said, "What pledge shall I give you?" And she said, "Your seal and your cord and your staff that is in your hand." And he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away and removed her veil from herself and put on her widow's garments. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adullamite to receive the pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. Then he asked the man of her place, saying, "Where is the prostitute who was by the road at Enaim?" And they said, "There has been no prostitute here." And he returned to Judah and said, "I did not find her." And also the men of the place said, "There's been no prostitute here." And Judah said, "Let her keep the things for herself, lest we become a laughingstock. You see, I sent her this kid, but you did not find her." And about 3 months later, it was told Judah, saying, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot. Moreover, now she is pregnant by harlotry." And Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, saying, "I am pregnant by the man to whom these belong." And she said, "Please note whose these are, the seal and the cords and the staff." And Judah took note of them and said, "She is more righteous than I, because I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not know her again anymore. And at the time of her delivery, there were twins in her womb. And while she was giving birth, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But when he drew back his hand, his brother suddenly came out, and she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore his name was called Perez. And afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Now Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. And Jehovah was with Joseph, and he became a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that Jehovah was with him, and that Jehovah caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found favor in his sight, and he ministered to him, and he made him overseer of his house, and put all that he had in his charge. And from the time he made him overseer in his house, and put him over all that he had, Jehovah blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. And the blessing of Jehovah was upon all that he had, in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and with him there he was not concerned about anything except the food that he ate. And Joseph was handsome in form and handsome in appearance. Now after these things his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused, and said to his master's wife, "Behold, with me here my master is not concerned about anything in the house, and he has put everything he has in my charge. There is no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great evil and sin against God?" And although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her to lie beside her or be with her. And one such day he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house were there in the house. And she grabbed by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. And when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, "See, he has brought in a Hebrew man to us to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I called out with a loud voice. And when he heard that I lifted up my voice and called out, he left his garment beside me and fled and went outside." And she placed the garment beside her until his master came home. And she spoke to him with these words, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you have brought to us came in to me to mock me. And when I lifted up my voice and called out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." And when his master heard the words of his wife that she had spoken to him, saying, "This is the way your servant has treated me," his anger burned. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while he was there in the prison, Jehovah was with Joseph, and he extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. And the chief jailer put in Joseph's charge all the prisoners who were in the prison, and whatever was done there, he was the one to do it. The chief jailer did not supervise anything that was in his charge, because Jehovah was with him, and whatever he did, Jehovah caused it to prosper.